The opinions expressed on this program are solely those of its hosts, guests, or callers, and do not necessarily represent the opinions of WTBR-FM, its management, other producers, or sponsors.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews. Thank you for tuning in. So today we have with us our guest, Lisa Torrey. She is director of the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, also known as RSVP, for the city of Pittsfield. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am so good to see you. So I laugh. Lisa's chuckling because we are former colleagues. And so I had the great opportunity to know Lisa during my time with the city of Pittsfield for nearly 8 years. And so during that time, I had the opportunity to talk with Lisa over many occasions, I should say. And, Lisa has a really great story. Like so many of us, right? She really has experienced different things, so many ups, downs, in between. And so she's here to share a little bit of her story and also why she loves her work.
Yeah.
All right. So you grew up in Lanesboro. Were you born there?
No, I was born in Pittsfield.
Okay.
Actually, my parents lived on Dalton Avenue.
Uh-huh.
My great-grandparents owned a house actually right across from Dunkin' Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have the Virgin Mary statue in the yard.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those triple-decker houses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they owned that.
Okay.
And so my parents lived there when I was first born.
Okay.
And moved to Lanesboro shortly thereafter.
Okay. How old were you?
When we moved to Lanesboro?
Yeah.
Probably an infant.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
you have no recollection of like Pittsfield as like a little kid?
No.
You growing up in Lanesboro, I want to say for a good chunk of your childhood, you were maybe like an only child.
Well, my brother is 8 years older than I am.
Oh, well, of course. Of course you wouldn't be an only child.
No, so he
Yeah.
went off to college.
Yeah.
When I was like 4th, 5th grade, he went off to college. And so after that, I became pretty much, an only child because he really came back that first summer.
Yeah.
And then after that, he stayed out in Boston.
What was it like for you to grow up sort of like in this sort of singular fashion?
It's a little strange. I mean, because you know that you have a sibling, but he's not always there.
Right.
And, at that point when he left, he kind of was like he'd help get me ready for school.
Oh.
Because my parents worked.
Right.
And so my mom would leave early for work, and he would help to get me. I can remember one morning he tried to help me put my hair in ponytail that morning. It didn't go well. I was really upset about it with him. He tried. but yeah.
Now the question is, did you go to school with the ponytail?
No, I didn't. Nope. I wouldn't go to school with it. And he tried his best, But yeah, so our mom worked.
Yeah.
So she was off to work early. At that point, my parents were divorced.
Yeah.
So he was in charge.
Now, was he a big brother that kind of was like, all right, you're my little sister and you're coming under my wing? Or was it kind of like, I'm the boss, I'm telling you what to do?
No, a little of both, but more like coming under my wing, like he definitely was.
Like a protector.
Yes. So it definitely was hard once he left for school.
You mentioned that your mom, like her schedule, so she was a school bus driver, right?
She started as a school bus driver.
Okay.
When I was a toddler.
That's an intense schedule because your hours are you have really early hours, and then you also have the evening schedule. So what was that like for you without your brother, right? Without him being there, what was that like for you growing up?
Well, I mean, so in this day and age, like I couldn't even imagine my kids even now.
So I got to ask you, Lisa, there was a time like around the 80s, like, so the terminology was latchkey kid, right?
Yes.
Latchkey. So would you say that you were a latchkey
Definitely.
kid? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could never picture like my kids functioning that way.
Right.
Like, you know, getting themselves breakfast, getting themselves dressed, like making sure they were out the door on time.
Yeah. But in a sense, though, when you think about it, and when you think about because you're a Gen Xer, right?
Yeah.
I'm a Gen Xer, too. Yeah. And when you think about some of the skills that we harnessed during that time, everything that you're saying actually like sets you up for like to be like a really good little adult, except you're not.
Yeah.
You know, you're still a little kid, but it's really like laying the groundwork and the framework for just responsibility. I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot during that time.
I mean, if I forgot something, then that was it. Then I just didn't have it at school. It wasn't. I was not going to call anyone and say, "Oh, I forgot my notebook at home on the countertop."
Yeah, there was. Yeah, if you forgot it, that was it.
That was
it.
If you forgot your key in the afternoon to get into the house,
that was it.
That was it.
That was it. So we learned a lot of lessons, right? During that time.
Very self-sufficient.
Very self-sufficient. And you talked a little bit too about that you actually would go on rides with your mom.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, I used to take the B bus because she eventually started working for the BRTA.
Okay.
She drove there for 34 years. Wow. Yeah. And so, I mean, I would walk down to Lanesboro General Store and hop on the bus.
How old were you?
Oh, God. Probably like 9, 10 years old. Yeah. Yep. And I would go down and get off at Newberry's and, you know, shop around for the day, go to the library.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And so just thinking about that scene right there, were there other kids that would be getting on the bus and doing the same thing? Like you weren't sort of this oddity. Like there were others who were just like you. Probably.
Oh, I'm sure there were. Yeah. I probably didn't even notice them. You know what I mean? I would just pick a seat and go sit down and ride down to North Street and walk around.
And then get back on the bus and go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I had a bus pass.
Yep.
I would just do it. I couldn't even imagine the kids in this day and age like going off and doing things like that.
Now, is it that we can't imagine it because when you say that, is it because just the society is different or because we have, I mean, there's so many different access points, right? That they can reach us, that they can, it's just very different. But I don't know. Is it a good or bad thing? What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a little of both. Because I think that Gen Xers try to overcompensate for the things that we did not have growing up. You know, I mean, I certainly understood that my parents had to work, but I also understood that, like, you know, hey, no one's going to do it for me, so I've got to figure it out.
Right. Like making food and stuff like Yep.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. It's, it was a time.
It was a time.
It was a time.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself nostalgic about that time? Or, like, I don't know. I feel like there's so many groups that pop up that are so nostalgic around
I think so.
Childhood.
I mean, it was like, you could go out and be out all day, like in the neighborhood, you know, as long as you were back by sundown.
When the lights came on.
When the lights came on, everything was great. You know, like, so, I mean, just to be out and not have to have a care in the world. Like,
and the funny thing is that when we were growing up, we just couldn't wait to grow up because we just thought, oh, wow. And now here we are.
Yeah.
So your mom has this really intense schedule. And you have freedom. You have this wide freedom to be able to sort of, navigate, and you're taking care of yourself. And obviously your mom is taking care of you too. I don't want to set the stage she's not
No.
like Lisa is just roaming around like this,
feral child.
Right? No. She has a family. And so, dovetailing into that, you were really close with your grandfather. So did he live with you all? Was he in the neighborhood?
No, he lived in Pittsfield. My mom grew up in Pittsfield.
Okay.
So she grew up in Little Italy. My mom's full-blooded Italian. And so, she worked for the BRTA. So obviously this is before cell phones.
Yeah.
And, she's driving a bus.
Right.
So if I got sick at school or I needed something, he was my person.
Right.
So I spent most of my sick days on his couch watching The Price is Right.
Didn't we all? I think I saw there was something called like the starter pack if you were like sick back in the 80s.
Yes, yeah.
And they had so The Price of Right was there, and then it was like ginger ale,
your saltine crackers.
The saltine crackers, and then soup.
Yep. Yeah. And so, he was retired.
Yeah.
And my grandmother passed away when I was like 5-6 years old, and he did remarry. But, and he volunteered a lot. He volunteered for RSVP, as a matter of fact.
Wow. Talk about full circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
He actually retired from the city of Pittsfield. He worked for the Parks Department.
Wow.
He was a carpenter.
Wow.
By trade. So, and he was a veteran too. And I worked in the Veterans Service Office. So there's kind of like
You ever think about that? Like how, like those roots and like where you are? I mean, I know we're going to get into all of that, but that's just, do you ever sit back and think about your connections?
I hadn't really thought about it too much, and I was talking about it one day with one of my volunteers, and they're like, wow, like you are really like connected to your grandfather. Like your life is like a parallel universe.
And you didn't even know it at the time.
I didn't even, hadn't even thought of it in that capacity.
Isn't that crazy, though?
Yeah.
It's almost like you were witnessing and you had access to this blueprint of what your life could look like, but you had no idea at the time.
Yeah.
So fascinating. So y'all are really close. Do you ever remember any just special moments or times with your grandfather that you're like, wow, that just stands out to me?
Oh, well, when he came to my high school graduation, I have a picture of him. So they hung everybody's stars with their names on it, and I have a picture of him holding my star up. Yeah, he was pretty proud.
Oh.
And he was certainly, like, when I became a mom, and that was his first great-grandchild, like, he was so over the moon about my son. Like, he really was. Yeah. It's
the bond that I guess children have with their grandparents. It's so special because grandparents have that privileged place of always giving the child back.
Yeah.
they can love on the child, they can do all of that, but then they can you go home with your parents, and grandparents have that. They have that special place. Tell me a little bit about, I can just picture you now, young Lisa, on the bus, roaming North Street, finding her dinner for the evening. No, it's not. No, but seriously though, how was school for you during this time, especially in a time where you described that you were sort of your own checks and balances for some things? What was that like for you, and did you enjoy school?
No.
Okay.
I hated school.
Okay.
It's not that I didn't have friends or anything like that. I feel like there was not a lot of checks and balances for me when it came to that, like, for instance, like with my own kids, like I'm constantly checking the app to make sure that they've handed their assignments in and done what there's. So there was not a lot of that.
We didn't have apps.
Yeah,
Lisa.
we didn't have that. So, and I just didn't, like, in hindsight, like, I didn't see the big picture of school. Like, I got by.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Like, but if I had applied myself, especially like to the areas that I didn't really care about, I would have done a lot better. You know, in areas where I was like, oh, this really interests me. Like, I was really good at it.
What were those areas?
Well, I was always good with words, so you know, I was interested in like social, you know.
I'm always curious. There's always a time when we're little, right? And when we're young, and when there are no limitations placed on us, and we dream about things and we say, I want to be this. We might not even have a full awareness of what it takes to even be that or whatever, but we just know we're drawn to it. Before life gave you limitations and told you what you could or could not be, or what your grades allowed you to do, or whatever, what was in your heart?
So in my heart, I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
So in hindsight, looking back at that, like, I always wanted to help people.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, kind of where I am right now, that's what I do. I'm in human services.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, nursing is, I feel like nursing is up there with those professions that are like a true calling. Like, you want someone who is a nurse that has a really good heart and is in it, and so that comes out, you know, that comes out in the way that you engage with folks. So I could see that. I could see nursing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't, because like the blood in that,
the plot thickens.
Yes. No, that would not appeal to me. But
so wait. You wanted to do nursing, but you didn't want the blood.
Yeah, no.
I don't think we can separate the two. I mean, that's for the same reason why I did not even think to do anything in the medical profession. I don't like blood.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't like needles. I don't like.
Yeah,
I
wouldn't be down for
and
that
then being
either.
forced to actually, like, you have to like draw blood.
No. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. You're in the right place.
I feel like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your journey through school was one where it was a little bit sort of like you're going through the motions. Your head is above water, but you're going through the motions. You're doing what you need to do. You're like, I'm just moving forward. And in high school, which high school did you go to?
Mount Greylock.
You went to Mount Greylock. Okay. So then you also worked at Jiminy Peak too.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So Jiminy Peak, obviously, is it the Jiminy Peak we see today? Was that the Jiminy Peak that was like, did it look like that then?
They've built it up a lot.
Okay.
Since I mean, they were building while I was working there.
Wow.
You know, so
Okay.
but they've built it up a lot since I've been there, and certainly recognizing that they have to be you know, all season resort,
Right.
and they cannot just rely on
Right.
the winter time.
Right.
So I mean, at the time there was no adventure park. There was just the Alpine Slide.
Okay.
In the summertime. So yeah. So it was kind of a different look. There was no ropes course. There was none of that.
Wow.
So yeah, so you know, they recognized that they really needed to beef up their game.
Got it. And so I would say that it was this Jiminy Peak experience, obviously, and I'm just even putting my mind is when you're in high school and to work at a place like Jiminy Peak in general is just going to seem fun and just amazing. But in some way, it inspired you for your coursework when you went to Bay Path, right? And so at that time, did you think to yourself, all right, maybe I can see like a full career in this pathway?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You know, when I was considering what I was going to do. I mean, it's so hard when you're 17, 18 years old. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm perfectly happy working at Jiminy Peak,
But Lisa, tell us 5 years from now. I don't.
Yeah. So what I had considered, because I always, liked working with children.
Okay.
I also babysat a lot as a kid. I started babysitting when I was 11 years old.
Yep.
And so I liked working with children too. So I didn't know, and it came down to the wire, and I'm sitting in the lunchroom, the break room with my coworkers at Jiminy Peak, and I'm like, what do you think? Yeah. And they were all like, oh, go for hospitality. So,
wait a second, is that how it happened?
Yeah, because I had to make a decision, It was time for me to pick my major, so that's what I picked. And, yeah.
Okay. All right. Before we continue, we'll be right back with Backstory. We're going to take a quick break.
89.7 WTBR-FM Pittsfield.
It's a whole new way of life. Well, let's hear it.
Support for WTBR comes from Berkshire Community College. BCC provides access to higher education to everyone in Berkshire County and beyond, offering more than 50 high-quality programs, small class sizes, and an affordable education to help their students of all ages achieve their dreams. At BCC, their middle name is community. And from Park Square Productions. Park Square Productions provides high-quality video and audio productions for businesses and nonprofit organizations throughout the Berkshires. Find more information about Park Square Productions and what they can do for you at parksquareproductions.com.
Hi, it's Jen Glockner. I'm the director of the Office of Cultural Development for the wonderful city of Pittsfield, and I also host the Cultural Pittsfield radio show on WTBR. It airs every Friday at 8:30 in the morning. Stay tuned to learn all about the arts and culture scene for the city of Pittsfield and beyond. We hope you listen in every Friday at 8:30 on 89.7 FM WTBR.
WTBR. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Okay, we're back. And my guest today is Lisa Torrey. She is the director of RSVP for the city of Pittsfield. So, Lisa, you were just talking a little bit about how you wound up focusing on travel and hospitality, which I'm like, wow, you put a lot of faith in your coworkers to decide your life. But you did it. What did you love about it, and what didn't you love about it as you started to pursue that avenue?
So, I loved the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's what I utilized most out of that degree was the fact that it was a business degree.
Yeah.
I wanted to work at a hotel.
Yep.
Not recognizing at 18 years old that a hotel is a 24/7 operation.
It is. What were you thinking? What
I was really thinking about. And then recognizing that a year into that, after I had graduated, that this is really not conducive to a lifestyle that I want to live.
Okay, and what was that lifestyle?
So, at the time, I'm going out with my friends.
Right.
I recognize that, I want to get married someday. Right. I want to have kids. I want to be able to have a normal 9-to-5 schedule.
Right. And that's not what your schedule looked like.
No.
What was it? Like 12-hour shifts?
It was, you got to be there when they check in, whatever times they check in. So, yeah. And it doesn't pay well. So, I ended up, because I came back to Pittsfield and I worked for the Hilton when it was the Hilton. Yeah. And it changed over to the Berkshire Plaza during my tenure there. And then it changed over to the Crown Plaza. So during that time was a lot of transition. And the hotel industry has companies that come in and train the staff on how to use the reservation software when they do a changeover like that. And so that company hired me.
Oh.
So I ended up in California for a month.
1 month?
For 1 month.
Was it meant to be 1 month?
Yeah, it was a one month training.
Okay.
So, here I am, like 21 years old, 21 years old,
Yeah.
and I fly out to California all by myself. So it was kind of an experience. And during that time, my cousin,
Yeah.
I got a phone call from the state police in New York State. My cousin, who's a year younger than I am, was missing. So it kind of put a damper on pursuing anything further with that company.
And Lisa, I know that's you previously shared that story with me. In one of our many conversations, and that was pretty hard on your family.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's been 26 years that she's been missing, and it was like a surreal experience for me, especially being out on the other side of the country by myself. To get this phone call and say, would she have known you were going to be there? Would she have followed you out there?
Right.
Yeah, it was really surreal for me, and it still is. I mean, you just want closure at this point. Like, you just want to know what happened to her.
She was a college student?
She was a college student at SUNY Albany. She grew up in Ballston Spa, New York, and she was working at Babbage's. That's a name you don't hear anymore.
No.
But it was a computer software store, and that was at Crossgates Mall.
Okay.
And she took the bus from Crossgates Mall that night back to her dorm room at campus, and never was seen again. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's sobering on so many levels. How did that? You're a young person at that time. As you were thinking about, obviously, it's impacted your family. You guys are devastated. And how did that change the way that you thought about your own safety, even just as you started to navigate the world? Because you're still young, you still want to do things, but now you have this sort of story and experience looming in the backdrop. What did that do for you?
Well, I mean, so when I came back from this training that was in California, my parents met me at Albany Airport, and the company called and said, we want you to be on a plane 24 hours from now and go out to Tennessee. And I was like, no. I was scared to death.
Yeah.
It just makes you aware that if this can happen to my family, like, this can happen to anybody.
Right.
Like, it's scary. The world is a scary place.
Do you think that impacted? I mean, obviously, and I know how you grew up as a kid too, but with that, again, having that experience, that traumatic experience, do you think that impacted how you with your kids? And
oh, definitely. Definitely. For a long time after I had my kids, if we would go over to Crossgates or Colony, like, I could not let them, like, literally out of my sight, like, within like a foot of me. Like, I had to know where they were. It would scare me just being over in that area. Yeah. I mean, and of course, this is, living through Louis Lent and that era of time and getting scared because, Jimmy Bernardo was pretty much the same age I was. He would be the same age as I am right now. It's pretty scary. Like, this happens,
right.
in Pittsfield. Well, this happened in Albany.
Right. It felt so close to home.
Yeah, everything is so close to home, and especially when it's your family member.
Right.
Like,
right. Because it's personal.
Yeah.
It's personal.
Yeah.
And it shatters your, I guess, the innocence. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and around the same time that happened, my stepfather at that time, he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and he was very ill. and I knew that my mother needed some support. So I just made the decision to stay home.
Right.
And at that time, I had gone to a job fair, and I wound up getting a job at KB Toys headquarters.
Right. Which, KB Toys. So, for a non-Pittsfielder like myself, that I'm a transplant to Berkshire County, but outside the area, I knew of KB Toys, right? So to me, it was like, wow, KB Toys actually was like headquartered here.
Oh, it was awesome.
How amazing was that?
Yeah.
Now you have to tell me. Inside, in the headquarters, what did that look like? What did that feel like? Because I think I grew up, it was Toys R Us, right? So it was Toys R Us, and then I feel like KB Toys inched
KB
on the
Toys,
scene.
and then we had Toy Works, which was in strip malls.
Okay, yep.
KB Toys was mall-based.
Yep.
And it was the time that internet is kind of picking up speed, and so e-commerce is coming into place. So I started out working there at their help desk.
Okay.
So I would go into work at, 3 o'clock. It's like work 3 to 11 shift.
Yeah.
So, because we had to be able to answer calls all over the country. So stores closed out on the West Coast. 3 hours behind us. So we had to stay open for them.
Okay.
And in hindsight, looking at taking phone calls and being like, help desk, kind of like what IT does, is just like, I'm like, how the heck did I do that? Like, what
were you, I'm just curious, what were you navigating in those calls? Like, what were some of the, I mean, it's been a while. I get it.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a while, but, my screen won't turn on. Like, when I hit this on the register, it won't
okay,
go
so you
through.
were navigating, okay.
Yeah. There's no power, So
and you just walk them through it.
over the phone. Yep. So you did get to know the managers all over the country, because you're their point. I mean, there's a help desk with 4 or 5 people working at it. So I mean, chances are you're going to talk to some of the same people and get to know them.
Right.
So it was a lot of fun. But then I met Darren, my husband.
Okay. Yes.
and I wanted to have a life that wasn't 3 to 11.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be able to see him.
Right.
And so I moved from the help desk to accounting.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is weird. Because anybody that knows me knows that I don't particularly care to sit down and figure numbers out. It's not my thing. But I did that.
Okay.
And then the job opened up in the buying department.
Okay.
And that was my goal, was to get to the buying department.
And you made it.
And I did. And let me just tell you, the buying department, there were toys everywhere.
I was going to say, see, that was what I was thinking of. Like, you're in a toy headquarters, so I can only imagine the layout, right? Toys.
It was, and I mean, there's constantly vendors coming and bringing samples of toys. It's just, it's incredible. Yeah. So I worked for the outlet division.
Okay.
That was fun. We had a fun team.
Okay.
And, when I got married and had Ethan, my son, who's 21 now, he was hooked up. I mean,
I was going to say, Lisa, I mean,
he was hooked up.
It would be a crime if, you did not bring home some goodies for him. He probably had everything.
He had everything.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. It was crazy. It was crazy. And, to this day, my boss, his name is Len Patnode.
Okay.
My son still refers to him as Grandpa Len because he bonded with him.
Yeah.
Who's the baby?
Okay. I have a question that is probably not in line because I don't think Ethan got one, but I'm just curious because, I don't know, were Cabbage Patch dolls still, or was that phased out by then?
No, that was phased out, but it was funny because we were the staff and I were talking about Cabbage Patch dolls today because we were talking about whether we played with dolls or what we played with when we were little, and I said, well, because Cabbage Patch was the era.
It was.
Yeah. And so my mom stood in line at Bradley's or Zayre's, one of those two, for my first Cabbage Patch doll, which I still have.
You still have yours?
Yeah, he's packed away in the basement. But I did give him to Ethan.
Oh.
Yes. He looked like Ethan. His name was RJ.
Okay. And they all came with a little birth certificate.
Yeah, his real name was Reed Joe, but I called him RJ. And he had, dark hair and dark eyes just like my son.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. I had one, but it was a fake. And that doll didn't see outside too much because it was not real.
Yeah.
And you know how you know how you knew it was real.
Yep.
You knew anyone who had a doll, there was a telltale way.
Yep. There was a signature.
There was a signature in a special place. And if it did not have that signature, first of all, that was the first place I looked when I got the doll. I was like, first of all, this doll looks a little emaciated. It doesn't look quite plump. That was the first sign.
Yeah.
And then the second sign was when the other sign wasn't there. Then I knew.
Yeah.
But I can only the thought of all the latest toys and all of that. And what was the rage when you were there?
Furbies.
The Furbies.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, we had Furbies. I mean,
jeez.
And it was back in the day, like KB Toys would produce a big float for the Pittsfield parade, for the 4th of July parade. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. They had a great Christmas party they would put on for the kids, the employees. Like it was, and they would have these sales for headquarters, people that worked at headquarters. We would have this big sale in a warehouse where, they'd have an aisle with like $1, like, $2 items, like, and they were like items that they would be selling for a lot more than $1 in the store. So,
when I think about those kind of experiences like you're describing, Lisa, because obviously now it is no longer, but you think about that moment, that snapshot in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were in something that was like truly amazing. Like you have this experience, you have this memory, and I'm sure you probably still have, bonds with your coworkers.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, Sheila, for one.
Yeah.
Sheila Marinero, I've known her
from your KB Toys days.
From my KB Toys days, yeah.
For those listeners just tuning in, my guest today is Lisa Torrey, Director of RSVP for the City of Pittsfield. Thanks, Lisa. All right, so you're talking about Sheila Marinaro and how many others?
Oh, gosh, there's my Dean, Mark Dean, it's especially nice to see that everybody has landed, on their feet in a good place. Yeah. Barbie Manuel, that's kind of why I went back to MCLA because Barb was there and, encouraged me. So, like, to see that there's still this camaraderie that we have, is amazing. We actually have a reunion planned in April.
For KB, for all KB Toy people or just y'all?
For all KB Toys. Anyone who...
How do you guys connect? Is there like a KB Toy group or...
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Oh.
KB Toys alumni. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I do.
Yeah,
we think it's awesome.
We do stay connected,
but you know what that means, though, Lisa? That means that you guys had like a real bond.
We did. It was a great place to work.
Because there's a difference. Mm-hmm. There's a difference with folks who, when a company dissolves and it no longer is, that's it. You might see the person and say, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" But what you're describing almost speaks to deep bonds that were formed. I guess you just had to be there.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I had a hard time because in 2006, we had already gone through a few layoffs at that point. And, you know, I had my daughter in 2006, and my mother had said to me, you know, because I had such a hard time going back to work after I had Ethan, you know, she said, your daughter's going to be your daughter for the rest of her life. I mean, the writing at this point is kind of on the wall. So, you know, I know you like what you're doing, but you got to make a decision, you know. And so I left KB Toys after my maternity leave and opened my own daycare so that I could stay home with her.
Now, that's another labor of love. Anytime, again, it's right up there with being a nurse. Like, you are caring for our most vulnerable little people, and it's such important work. How long did you do that for?
So I did that for 4 years. Okay. Until my daughter went into preschool.
Okay. And then you were like, it's time.
Yeah, well, and it really wasn't, it was starting to become time, and I really didn't know what my next step was going to be, but because my son had done the parent-child home program with Pittsfield Public Schools, he did that with my husband, which was really nice because my husband was the parent that was home that could do that. When I did the daycare, I ended up doing the parent-child home program as a daycare.
Okay. And tell me a little, I mean, the parent-child home program, what was that?
So that is a national program. Okay. And the Pittsfield Public Schools sponsored the program. Okay. Since the early 1970s. Okay. And the premise is that you are your child's first teacher. So it's engaging with the parent, engaging with the child from the age of 2, usually 2 and 3 year olds, and it guaranteed them a spot in pre-K. So at Morningside or Conti at the time. Got it. So at the time, my daughter was in pre-K at Morningside. Okay. And I was approached by the director, and she said, "Do you want to become a parent-child home visitor?" So that's how I started in Pittsfield Public Schools.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So the journey, wow. What a journey, Lisa, because Pittsfield Public Schools, and I mean, I really, because I want to get into your work where you are today right now. I want to get into the meat of that. Your journey, obviously, it takes you different routes, but you had a mentor. You had someone who inspired you, and I don't want to lose track of that. There was someone who inspired you to move forward. Talk a little bit about that person.
So for me, that was Roseanne McDevitt. She was the director of the Parent-Child Home Program. Okay. She was my boss. She became my mentor. She became like a second mom to me. She took me under her wing. She understood, the human side of being a leader, understood some of the challenges that people face outside of work and the personal issues that go on, and was very supportive of me and my family and my journey. So,
would you say she inspired you to think broad about your future goals? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the sad thing about the Parent-Child Home Program is that the school department at the time did not see, the need in investing money into, pre-K. And I think
there's a lot of movement toward understanding the value of that now. I think definitely the tide has shifted, whereas maybe there could have been this lull, but I think everyone understands now there's so much value in getting kids off to the right start, and it's those are the formative years.
And getting their parents off to the right start, because a lot of the times you're going into a home where maybe mom or dad has had a bad experience in their own education. Right. And so they don't want to have a connection with the school, and, to get them to understand that they are their child's first teacher, that, it's okay to go and talk to a teacher, and here's how you go about it, and to give them some kind of guidance and support, right? From that first experience when the child is so young is so important, because that carries through with them throughout their education.
It is. And I could only imagine that you've seen so many different, the scale, right? You just even mentioned just even being afraid to talk to a teacher. Like the teacher is your partner in education. But I think those, depending on whatever experience you've had, again, whether it's good or bad, it serves to inform your consciousness and how you proceed. So, but again, I think that everyone is recognizing that pre-K, and you need everyone because the child can't teach itself, right? The child needs, him or herself, or just they need their parents, they need the guidance,
and it's a humbling experience because as a home visitor, I'm going into somebody's home.
That's right.
So, it was humbling for me because I, up until that point, thought everybody has grown up like I did.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
So it shifted your perspective.
It really did. Because sometimes you're going into a home where they don't even have any furniture. Like they're using lawn furniture as their furniture. So having that perspective of not everybody's like me, and this is what the child is dealing with when they come to school. Like,
right.
So
having those observations and encounters definitely broadens the awareness. And I think it would be helpful, for so many to understand that those are the factors that are sort of behind the scenes. So sometimes, like you said, when the child does go to school and you see certain behaviors and you see certain things, sometimes you have no idea what their home life is like. And that home life drives a lot.
Yes, it sure does. So having that connection really helped me in my future roles with Pittsfield Public Schools, because after the home program lost its funding in 2015, I was forced to go into a position that I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this is going to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I became a one-on-one paraprofessional in the 2015-2016 school year.
Okay.
And that really helped me in that role because what that student was lacking at that point was the understanding of what the home piece was. Like, nobody had made a connection with his mom and dad at that point.
Wow.
And so I immediately took it upon myself to make that connection as a paraprofessional. Like, I need to have a conversation with his mom. Like, I need to let her know I'm on her team. Like, and I sat in at his IEP meeting because I spent all day with him every day. And so, I was invited to be a part of that conversation. And at the end of the conversation, what I gained from his mother was his mother didn't have an understanding. She had a reading deficit, and she didn't understand what was written in the IEP at that point. And I said, hey, did you know that they changed this? She didn't know that. So that's when kind of my wheels started turning, like, I want to help people. Like,
and you also gained her trust.
Yes.
Because there's no way that she would have let you sit in there if she didn't trust you. And so that is, in addition to the expertise and all of that, is a trust factor. And that's what you also carry with you in the current work that you do as the director of RSVP, because your journey has taken you. It's taken you through the toys. It's taken you through the homes. It's taken you through the school. You had quite the journey.
I did to get to where I am. Yeah,
and you should be proud of yourself. It's been such a what a ride.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing and in your role with the city.
So I started with the city in January of 2018. So I came over from the school side. So I started in the Veterans Office, as you know.
Yes.
And at that point, I had started school in the fall of 2017. So I made the decision, I'm going to go back to school for human resource or for human services,
Yes.
finish up the bachelor's degree because I already had the associate's degree with the travel. Business.
Right.
Business. Typing especially was a very important part of that degree. It's come in handy.
Yep.
But, I made that decision.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. And so then the veterans job came up at City Hall. And, I looked at the job description and I'm like, that nothing could be more human service than that role.
That's right.
So what a better way to learn human services than just being in the thick of it.
That's true.
And I can tell you that mid-January, I was like, what have I done? What have I done? I can't say that there wasn't nights where I was like, I should not have done this. Yeah. But eventually, things started to click in and I started to learn the role and became very good at what I did in the veterans office. So at least I think so.
Yes. Well, you're here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So then the position came up in RSVP and it was shortly after I had finished my degree. So I finished my degree in December of 2019, fully anticipating that I would be able to walk with the rest of my cohort when they finished in May of 2020. And that did not happen because we all know what happened in 2020.
What happened? That's right.
And so, I decided to sit where I was in veterans because at that point I was still it's March of 2020. I had just finished up my degree and I was just starting to kind of put my feelers out there and figure out what the next step was going to be.
Right.
And that happened. So I ended up staying in veterans until February of 2022 when I moved over to RSVP as the director. And I'm thankful that that's how it happened. I know I was starting to get a little bit like, what did I go back to school for if I'm just going to sit over here, But it ended up working out timing-wise.
How have you grown? What are the ways in which you've grown as you think about your career path and in your role that you've, this role? What are the ways that you've grown that you're most proud about?
Well, I'm really proud of the way that I can kind of talk myself through something that's very difficult. I think you and I had talked about it at the beginning of my role when I took, having these positive, affirmations and kind of taking myself out of a negative mindset. Like when something new is thrown at me that I've never seen before, it's like, okay, it's not that I can't do this. Right. It's that I'm learning how to do it.
Right.
So, and I'll get there. Right. So I'm proud of myself for having that kind of internal dialogue with myself. And I know recently we had a training at work, about change and transition. And I felt kind of silly saying it, but I'm like, I don't really have a problem with change and transition. I can get myself into the mindset, like, this is how it's going to be. I've done that so many times. Right. Because I think the question was, who is the person that you go to, to kind of, who's good at change? Yeah. I'm like, well, in my family, it's me. Yeah. I
don't think that's a bad thing. I mean,
toot my horn, but
changes. No, I mean, you certainly had several changes, and what that change does, Lisa, is that every change helps to inform you. Every change equips you with something. You take a little piece of something from each part of your journey, and you get used to it. And I think, but there are people who have stayed in a role for X amount of years or whatever. And so change is a foreign concept. Change can be hard for a lot of people if you are accustomed to something over a long period of time. So you are just among the group that have experienced it And you can say, hey.
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I had to, when Parent-Child Home Program wrapped up, I mean, the school department was like, here's your assignment. And I remember hearing, some of my colleagues say to me, oh, that's who you're going to be, that's what your job's going to be. You're not going to like it. Nobody ever stays in that position. And, and I said...
Well, they were already peppering you with negative thoughts before it even started.
So I had to kind of reframe my thoughts, and I feel like I'm good at doing that. Like, I had to reframe my thoughts and think, hey, this is my job now.
Right.
I have to make this work.
Good for you.
So I kind of do that kind of dialogue all the time, especially when I find myself going to that place, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, no, you've gotten through this before. You'll get through it again. Like, it's, it's a transition. You'll figure it out. So I am proud of myself because that is definitely growth mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Just thinking about those individuals. And I think they're not alone because in life, you're always going to have people who have an interpretation, right, of something. And I think it takes, just good self-analysis and awareness to be able to say, wait a second, what I'm hearing doesn't line up with what I know to be true or where I'm going. And maybe that's good for you, but I'm just going to let you sit with that and not take it with me because you got to have that, imagine if you would have taken that advice. Imagine if you would have said, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
It's going to suck. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be terrible. And imagine if you started to then take on all of that negative thinking, that would have affected your performance. And if you performed in a way that was detrimental, who's to say that would not have had, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You think about the domino effect of how every single thing along your journey matters.
Yeah.
Right? And so you started off with a good attitude and it allowed you to take a little something from each step in your journey to where you are today.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Huh. Okay. It's I know we don't always give ourselves time to think about that path, but it's important, it's important because each step along the way is meaningful. It tells us something. It really does. And when you're in the moment, you don't know.
No.
Because the moment is just a moment.
Yeah.
Until it's not anymore. Hence the KB Toy Alumni Group. I'm just saying. And it was a moment and it was a time. But in that moment, you guys didn't know the amazing bonds you were forming.
Yeah.
And now look at you guys still together.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, one of the bonds that I have is with Mike Klein. I don't know if you've heard of Mike Klein before, but he ended up being in my cohort at MCLA too. Okay. So, so we've kind of reconnected in that way. Okay. So he's part of the organization of our reunion that we have. Yeah.
And it keeps growing.
It
keeps growing. All right, Lisa, we're winding down time from this really, really great conversation. I'm going to ask you, if you had to choose one word to describe you, what would that be?
Empathetic.
Okay. I see that.
Yeah.
I see that.
I mean, I could say another word too. Compassionate.
Well, we could stay at empathetic. It's your word.
Yeah. I mean,
keep empathetic. I see compassionate. I see empathetic. I see all of it. And it's fit in for the work that you do, and I know that RSVP is in good hands. It's in good hands, and so I'm excited to see and learn more. And if people want to learn more about RSVP, where can they go?
They can give us a call.
Okay.
499-9345 is the number. We are located at 16 Bartlett Avenue, which is on the back side of the library near the children's department. So stop by and see us anytime.
Perfect. All right. All right, everyone. You've been listening to Backstory. Let's hear it on WTBR-FM Pittsfield with Roberta McCulloch-Dews. I just want to thank Lisa for a wonderful conversation today. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure for me as well.
Oh, thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks so much, and have a great day.